So that will be paper 7, and none others than one of the most beautiful landscape architects in Malaysia. I really have to say that, okay? Normally, I always use that term on Facebook. So today, I'm very proud to say the most beautiful landscape architects in Malaysia. So now, let's listen to her paper. And also before that, we have landscape architect Juita Wan Hashim. Landscape architect Juita, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah,
right?
thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the speakers. Thank you to Taja Rutina, to Encik Saifuddin, and all the organizer. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and they're all happy here. Woo, woo.
Yeah.
So allow me to read a little bit about your biodata so that all others online will definitely get up close to you, right?
Yeah.
So landscape architect Juita Wan Hashim is a principal of Verona Design. So she's the founder and principal of Verona Design Sdn Bhd, an award-winning, vibrant firm established almost a decade ago. The success of the firm is attributed directly to Juita's vision and continued pursuit of her excellence, where she has been recognized through various professional platforms such as IFLA and ILAM. Landscape architect Juita Wan Hashim is a corporate member of the Institute of Landscape Architects Malaysia ILAM since 2008, an ILAM council member from 2010 and 2014, and a jury member of the Malaysia Landscape Architecture Awards MLAA in 2016 and 2018. She was awarded with the Young Landscape Architects Award as well as Landscape Architecture from the University of Technology Malaysia UTM, and is currently pursuing her studies for master's degree at University Putra Malaysia, specializing in healthy landscape design environment. So today, ladies and gentlemen, her paper entitled Imbroglio in Crisis Management, Urban Parks for Healthy Living Environment. So what she will do today is that using an Italian terminology, imbroglio, which defined as tangle, entanglement, and chaotic situation, this talk is in line with the current COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused an unprecedented human and health emergency. This talk on crisis management elaborates on depth on effective preventive initiatives to strengthen the mental health during this crisis through urban park development and healthy living environment. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very sure that we are not just going to listen into an ordinary landscape architecture approach in urban parks. So here for you, ladies and gentlemen, and here to you, our beautiful speaker, and the time is yours. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you to Dr. Atia. Hi, my name is Juita, Landscape Architect Juita Wan Hashim, and I'm from Verona Design Sdn Bhd. And I would like to wish all of you Happy National Day 2021. I'm delighted to be part of this celebration, sharing you some of the information, facts, statistics, and data and ideas based on my ongoing research. So as we know that currently we are having a pandemic crisis and enormous resources have been allocated in order to monitor the COVID-19 pandemic and treat patients. However, little attention has been paid to strengthen the mental health crisis. Based on the current research by the World Economic Forum, WEF, stated that 1 in 3 adults are depressed or anxious due to COVID-19, which are mostly women, younger adults, and individuals of lower socioeconomic status. These figures are frightening. It can be any one of us. It can be our friends, our colleague, our family, our people sitting beside us. So we are, as a landscape architect, we are frontliner. We need to help people. We need to educate people and to deal with these mental health stress issues. Learning to cope with stress in a healthy way using a nature therapeutic effects will make you, the people care about you, and those around you become more resilient in line with SDG 3 and SDG 11. Can I have a next slide, please? Next slide. Okay. Human society and cities are suffering numerous crises at the moment, such as floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, fires, environmental pollutions, as human minimizing biodiversity by global deforestations to make way for building infrastructure, agriculture, intensive livestock farming. The costs bring wildlife closer to humans, increasing the risk of disease pandemics such as COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented human and health crisis. As of 17 February 2021, 109 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 have been identified by the WHO globally, with 269,000 occurring in Malaysia, including 298 active cases daily and 983 deaths. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented human and health crisis. A global public health emergency that has triggered worldwide alarm is the latest coronavirus disease, and the World Health Organization announced on the 30th January 2020 that the latest outbreak of coronavirus is a public health emergency of the international concern. Next slide, please. What is coronavirus? Coronavirus are zoonotic or zoonoses, meaning they are transmitted in between animals and people. The name zoonoses based on the Greek words for animal and sickness. The emergence of zoonosis disease is often associated with environmental changes, ecological disturbances, which is agricultural intensifications and human settlements, or encroachments into forests and other habitats. I can say that in other words, is based on the human's activity. Deforestations and degradations of forests open up previously undisturbed areas and pave the way for a suit to a disease to jump to humans. Deforestation causes displaced wild bats to feed and breed in farmlands where they can infect other animals, which then infect humans. While the virus was first connected to a live animal market in Wuhan, China, it is now spreading from one person to another person. It spreads between individuals mainly when they are in close contact with another individual. The virus can spread into small liquid particles from the mouth or nose or infected person when they are speak, cough, sneeze, or breathe heavily. And like I mentioned just now, little attention has been paid for the adverse effects on mental well-being or successful prevention measure, which is very critical currently at this moment. Next. What is imbroglio crisis? Borrowed from an Italian imbroglio, which is actually defined as tangle and tanglement model. Imbroglio means an unwanted, difficult, and confusing situations, full of trouble and problems, complexity, complications, and difficulty. Common emotional responses during this pandemic crisis were debilitating fear of contagion, isolation that can induce the feeling of loneliness, anxiety, uncertainty, depression, frustrations, and fear, boredom, and social isolation, as well as a lack of outdoor activity. It has amplified significantly more severe mental health problems, which actually the effects are last much longer than the health effects itself. Next. What are the causes of imbroglio crisis? Number one, quarantine. What is quarantine? It is derived from the Italian words quarantagioni, which means 40 days. The practice of quarantine is begun during the 40th century in Venice in order to protect the coastal cities from plague epidemics. Shipping arrived in Venice from infected ports were required to sit at anchor for 40 days before landing. Actually, quarantines during pandemic is separations and restrictions of the movement of person that might have been exposed to an infection disease in order to determine whether they are unwell, thus decreasing the possibility of infecting others. It's always uncomfortable feeling experience for those who endure it. Separation from the loved ones, loss of independence, confusion about the disease status, boredom, it actually can generate a very drastic impacts. Next. Stresses during quarantine. Number one, duration of quarantine. The three researchers found that longer quarantine durations were directly linked to poorer mental well-being, symptoms of post-traumatic stress, avoidance habits, and frustrations. Number B, fears of infections. Participants in studies expressed fears about their own health or fears of infecting others and were more likely than those not quarantined of fear infecting family members or loved ones. They were particularly worried about their own infections, if they encountered any physical symptoms which is possibly related to the disease, and they're afraid that the symptoms can indicate the persistence of the infection several months later to be related to psychological outcomes. Next. Number C, frustration and boredom, confinement, lack of daily routine, and decreased social and physical interaction with others have often been shown to cause participants to be disturbed or by boredom, dissatisfactions, and a sense of alienations from the rest of the world. This frustration was exacerbated by not being able to take part in regular day-to-day task activities. D, inadequate informations. Many respondents, many people cited inadequate public health knowledge about this crisis, this pandemic, as a stressor, reporting insufficient clear guidance on measures to be taken. Next. Stressors, post-quarantine, finances. It can be issued with people unable to work and having interrupt their professional activities with no advanced planning, cause significant socioeconomic deprivation in the examined studies, and was found to be a risk factor of symptom of psychiatric disorders, frustrations, and anxiety. Financial loss can be an issue during quarantine with people unable to work and have to interrupt their professional activities, no advanced planning, and the effects is actually tend to be long lasting. The financial loss due to quarantine can cause significant social economic deprivation in the examined studies and was found to be a risk factor for symptom of psychiatric disorders and both frustration and anxiety several months after quarantine. Stigma is actually a fear of rejections. Quarantine participants were much more likely to report stigma and rejection from the individuals after they recovered in the local community, suggesting that the stigma is actually happening surrounding them because they are worried that people will ignore them, bothering them, or maybe making negative remarks about them. Next. Isolations. As we know that during the public health effect of COVID-19 create a global situation which forced many people to stay at home and avoid near contact to each other. Naturally, anxiety and confusion surrounding sudden health authorities order to drastically alter people's social life and how people use their local urban spaces. Facing uncertainties in the employment, education, having to adapt to sudden changes related to the movement restrictions, and even obtaining a daily provisions of food supplies can be very stressful, especially in the more remote areas. Next. It is also well known that the social isolation between the older adults, between the elderly, becoming a very and more serious public health concern due to the higher risk of cardiovascular, autoimmune, mental well-being, and neurocognitive issue. Social disconnection puts older adults at increased risk of anxiety and depressions. And a point of view article published by Journal of American Medical Association stated that there is also concern that the loneliness could be more difficult for older people during this pandemic, which will worsen current mental health problems. Next. Economic hardship and business closure. As we know, it is happening around us. Stress and anxiety, according to Lu Dong and the others in his journal, stated that stress and anxiety resulting from household confinement conflicts, example, domestic violence, as well as an economic recession triggered by a pandemic that often result in involuntary jobs and loss of income, could turn into a full-fledged mental health crisis. There is a lot of research of prior economic downturns shows that job loss is related with increased depression, anxiety, distress, and low self-esteem may contribute to higher rates of suicide and drug use disorder. Unemployment have weakened job stability, and as a result of this pandemic, hardship would have an effect on individual health and healthcare in general. Next. Number 4, health workers and frontliners, because they are the ones who directly involved and link with the COVID-19 patients. They are very stressful. They are very stressed every day. And it can be seen that studies shows that those healthcare workers feared contagion and infections of their family, friends, and colleagues, felt uncertainty and stigmatizations, reported reluctance to work or contemplating resignations, and reported experiencing high level of stress, anxiety, and depression symptoms. Next. The last one, I think it happened to all of us, school closure and lack of childcare. During the lockdown, during the MCO, there is a lot of depression, anxiety among the parents and carers, increased the pressure of the lockdowns. Because the parents are always worried about their children's future, not many parents found it easy to homeschool their children because everything is online learning and we have to teach their children. Some even have to quit their job to look after the children, as many daycare centers school closed. Research also shown that the panic points to concern around poor mental health and well-being for children and their parents to experience challenging with the school closure and lack of childcare. Next. These are all the impacts of imbroglio crisis during this pandemic: fear, depression, loneliness, boredom, anger and anxiety, stigmatizations, a sense of uncertainty, insomnia, irritability, alcohol abuse, domestic abuse, increased rate of child abuse, increase of suicide rates. And based on the research, based on the website by WHO 2020 stated that sheltering in place with family members poses risk to well-being due to drastic increase in domestic violence in many countries during the COVID-19 crisis. And from March 18 to a total of 266 people committed suicide from March 18 to October 21, which is an average of 30 cases a month or one in every day, which is very crucial and very frightening. So how we can help all those people? Next, what can be done to mitigate the consequences of imbroglio crisis? Learning to cope with stress in a healthy way will make you, the people who care about you, and those around you to become more resilient to face this pandemic. Next, by going to the park, because parks will provide a wide variety of ecosystem services which can help people to deal with many diseases and improve their quality of life and health status. Parks can be described as a landscape plan and managed to meet some of the population's needs. These conditions relate to the need to relax, spending time in touch with nature, to meet people, or to engage in social events, to participate in physical activities and sports. Next. Back to the history. It is proven that health and disease have always shaped our cities. Let me explain how pandemic prompted cities to create more green spaces for people. There are two case studies which happened in 1880s in New York City and the Paris City during the cholera pandemic outbreak. Next. During the cholera pandemic spurred the development of Central Park in New York. When cholera took the lives of 3,500 residents in a matter of weeks after it reached New York City in the summer of 1832, the disease was considered to be a result of unhealthy air and polluted water. Filthy streets of city filled with human waste and garbage produced a dreadful odors known as miasma that were considered to be responsible for the spread of disease. Miasma theory proponents advocated for better ventilation, drainage, and sanitary practices to get rid of foul-smelling and malevolent air. The cholera response in New York City ended up stimulating elements of urban design, such as large boulevards and parks, which turned New York and other major cities into the iconic metropolis as we know today. Central Park has been constructed after this cholera pandemic happenings in the city. Next. In the same time, the Board of Health New York City made way for Central Park, the first public park in the country, on the premise that open space enhance human and environmental health. The landscape architect, Frederick Law Olmsted, the father of landscape architecture, who had lost his first child to the cholera disease, began to formulate his theories about the health benefits of public parks. He advocated for the healing power of parks, which he believed could act like urban lungs as outlet for the full airs and inlets for poor air. Olmsted, taking about importance of trees, injecting of fresh air in the city. He emphasized the importance of large open spaces to allow people to access fresh air and sunlight and discuss how air could be disinfected by sun and foliage. Next. Next is Paris City. How the pandemic prompted cities to create more green spaces for people, which also happened in the development of city of Paris. Emperor Napoleon III came to power in France in 1848 amid a cholera outbreak that took the life of approximately 19,000 Parisians. An admirer of the parks and Garden Square in London, the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, Bonaparte sought to reshape Paris in the wake of the pandemic. In Paris, a 6-month cholera outbreak in 1832 precipitated not only the constructions of the underground sewer system, but also a new, wider streets and sidewalks, parks and squares. In 1853, Baron Haussmann was appointed by Napoleon III, which is also an admirer of London's parks and garden squares, to essentially renovate and reimagine Paris through a vast public works programs that open up new streets, brought light and air into the city and make the city healthier by letting the beneficial sunlight reach everywhere within the light. While cholera took the life of 10,000 people worldwide, responses to the disease resulted in discoveries of public sanitations and urban design intervention with the lasting impact of the built environment in some of the most famous cities in the world. It transformed Paris into the modern city of light till today. Next. Keeping public parks accessible to the public should be part of the sustainability agenda, aiming simultaneously to strive towards SDG 3, good health and well-being, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. So these are the roles of urban park for healthy living environment. Next, number 1, mental health wellness. Collado and the others, and Neil and the others, stated in the journals that spending time in nature has been shown to reduce the response to a human stress and increase physical and mental health. And exposure to natural environments almost instantly enhances our emotional experience immediately. Environmental psychologists have known for some time that simply looking at nature can improve our mood, and that exposure to nature environment can make the demands of urban life seems more manageable. Exposure to nature has a positive physical and mental health benefits, including lower rates of heart disease, stroke, obesity, stress, and depression. Being in contact with nature also can increase pro-social behaviors like generosity, helpfulness, and cooperation. A recent study found that people who spend at least 2 hours in nature per week consistently more likely to report higher levels of health and well-being compared to people who spend less time in nature. Next. The biophilia hypothesis would suggest that through an innate love of nature and seeking out natural settings in our life, it will draw our attention and interest simultaneously, giving us a sense of pleasure and peace. Urban parks provide a stress release during times of societal disruption, such as pandemic, which is happening now, but it also can help people to physically and mentally prepare for such times. Because I believe this is not the first pandemic. It can happen again and again and again. Parks will promote physiological well-being, which in turn to improve resistance to, as well as the ability to cope with new pathogens. Next. Number 2, physical activity. Sanders and the others stated in his journal that physical exercise has the ability to minimize the severity of infections with COVID-19. And this is linked to what occurs during an infections in the lungs. The immune system defects and destroys the invading virus in the lungs. With longer-term exercise, more individuals have adequate amounts of antibodies to defend against the infections. Means that we need to do a lot of exercise so that our antibodies are strong to defend against the COVID-19 infections. Exercise has been shown, as we know that exercise has been shown to have clear health benefits for healthy people and patients with various illnesses. And residents are advised to perform the proper amount of the frequency of exercise every week to maintain their health. Engaging in regular physical activities is protective against poor cardiovascular health, obesity, hypertension, and diabetes, which are also shown as a risk factor of COVID-19. Next. Generally, during urban quarantines due to pandemic, residents' outings are very limited. Gymnasiums are closed. I also cancel my gym membership during the lockdown because I'm not be able to go there. Therefore, the sports and outdoor activities are reduced, while sedentary behavior may increase. In order to protect the body and reduce the harm caused by COVID-19, the value of regular involvement in some form of physical activities or physical and psychological well-being is very essential. essential. Sorry. Next. Number 3, social interactions and community building. Z and the others stated in his journals that social interaction is a critical everyday activity of urban residents and has been shown to correlate positively with enhanced health, well-being, and quality of life. Quarantine policies have resulted in substantial restrictions of the social conduct of the residents as they are prohibited from accessing some public areas. During the pandemic, preserving public access to parks can build a sense of community threatened by the loss of other indoor social, because most of people not be able to go to coffee shop, social events, social activities with the respect to physical restrictions. So parks can improve social cohesion at the community level and help build a sense of integrations and inclusion among residents, because social interaction is very essential in daily behavior of urban residents and has been shown to be positively correlated with better health, well-being, and quality life. We need to meet people, we need to socialize with people every day, and urban quarantine policy has resulted in significant limitations to residents' social behavior because they are restricted from entering public places and must keep a certain distance from others and avoiding physical contacts, which actually this will decrease in social behavior, which lead to an increase in social isolations and loneliness and have a negative impact towards individual. Parks actually offered the space and the social norms for spontaneous social contact and opportunities for relationship formation between the neighbors, between the people, between the residents, and it is actually an indicator of quality of life. Next. Number 4, adequate place for social distancing. Parks are substantial, they are large, they are big open spaces, they are resilient, they are very resilient for emergency public health. It will allow people to spread out, reducing crowding in less desirable areas. Preserving public parks can allow people to maintain at a safe and responsible distance. Access to the parks could reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission and increase community and social cohesion. If parks are closed or access is otherwise limited, people, to release their stress, they might move to less desirable or congested public spaces, which will be very dangerous because they can easily transmit the virus from the others. This is actually the pictures of Dominus Park in New York, where they have been painted, the parks have been painted with white circles to encourage with social distancing and encourage people to stay safely apart during the pandemic, and social distancing circles to adapt with the COVID-19 crisis. Next. Reduce air pollution. I think these have been mentioned by Dr. Azlin previously, that going back to SDG 13 goals, climate action, besides functioning as carbon sequestrations, vegetation also can control temperatures and humidity and reduce air pollutions. Emerging research studies, including a study from Harvard School of Public Health, finds that breathing more polluted air over many years may itself worsen the effects of COVID-19. Researchers analyzing 120 cities in China found that a significant relationships between the air pollutions and COVID-19 infections and the coronavirus death across 60 regions in Italy, Spain, France, and Germany, which 78% of them occurred in 5 of the most happening in the most polluted regions. So actually, exposure to the air pollutions can be a risky for many chronic diseases that make people become seriously ill, unhealthy, require intensive care, mechanical ventilation, and die. It can die from COVID-19 crisis, and it also can affect the body's natural defense against the airborne virus and increase the possibility people will contract viral disease, even possible with COVID-19. Next. So as we know that urban greenery can directly minimize the air pollution, as dust and particles of smoke are trapped by the vegetation. Research has also suggested that on average, 85% of a park's air polluted can be filtered. It can help to control temperatures and humidity. As been stated by Anne Hidalgo, Mayor City of Paris, pollution joined up with coronavirus is a particularly dangerous cocktail. And stated by Francisca Dominici, a Harvard biostatics professor. If you are getting COVID-19 and you have been breathing polluted air, it is really putting gasoline on a fire. Next. To desire to seek a recreation and solace in the settings during this time of crisis could impress people with the significance of public parks near the doorsteps and increase the awareness of these areas and the biodiversity they contain. During this crisis, people have turned to their parks like never before for fresh air, exercise, meditations, and a sense of calm. Parks is actually a key feature of resilient city, partially due to their capacity to be converted for emergency health purposes. Next. There is a lot of happening in around the world. People are debating about these issues, about how importance of maintaining urban green infrastructure and further to improve it, how we're going to improve the green spaces, allocation of greenery in the city, because this experience of crisis will radically change the world and green spaces around us. We recommend that the expanded development of urban greenscapes to be part of these changes. Next. Closing of parks. The closure of the parks, as we know that during the MCO, there'll be a few months closure of the parks because of emergency proposals, and they have been instructed by the governments to, all the authority have to close the park currently, which actually is a last resort disease control measure, and it should be reopened as a priority during the urban shutdowns occur for people to go out and to breathe, to see the greenery, to refresh themselves, to re-energize themselves, and to be physically active by having an outdoor activity. The park should not be closed. Next. What happens if there are not enough parks in the city? This is actually nearby my housing area. I used to jog parks in KLCC or Taman Tasik Titiwangsa because we don't have big parks available nearby our residence area. So as you can see that if there are not enough parks in the city, the insufficient parks may result in the public to use the main vehicles access route for the leisure, which actually compromising their safety and taking up the vehicle space. It is also dangerous for the vehicle and the public users itself. So myself, I always park. If I don't go to the park, I will jog nearby to at the residence area, and I feel like it is very dangerous and it's very crowded. So I think this is what happened when there are not enough parks in the city. People will just jog along the road, which is actually dangerous to them and also the vehicle. Next. Long-term recommendations. These are actually some of the recommendations that I think the pandemic could change the form and distributions of the green spaces that we want, as well as our perceptions of what should be given to green spaces, because the risk is clearly affected by the size of public green spaces in the cities. So maybe in long term, these are some of my recommendations. Maybe the infrastructure plans should include policies and strategies for creating healthy environments, because this pandemic can happen again. This is just a beginning. It can be more and more pandemic. We already found a vaccine, but it might happen all over again. This is just like a cycle. So we should have an emergency plan. What is our emergency exit? So maybe we need to prioritize green spaces on streets and neighborhoods, which is lack of them. And we need to ensure the quality of parks and green spaces are located in close proximity to people, regardless of where they live, because parks need to be accessible. Every citizen in the city should have equal access to shared public spaces. And I think that, I believe that municipalities should review the local design guidelines and zoning codes to ensure that they include provisions for greenscape, green streets, or other greening strategies, which is maybe widen a walkway, footpath, cycle path. So this is part of the strategies that have to be planned by during the planning stage, during the infrastructure plan, or maybe the zoning have to look up on the zoning code or zoning of the green area in the cities to ensure that there is sufficient and enough parks in the city. And actually, the Landscape Institute, LI, from the United Kingdom has come out with the Greener Recovery Policy Paper to deliver a sustainable recovery from COVID-19 while tackling the climate change. Some of the regulatory reforms take a natural capital approach to the new infrastructure and housing, and they have set a higher and fairer standards for green spaces in United Kingdom. So this is what they have done. They have quickly done after the pandemic happened. The policy paper is already done by the Landscape Institute. So maybe we should think how we can sit and think how we can do about all this based on the pandemics happening right now. Next. So these are long-term considerations. Maybe we should have a social distancing play. We should consider placing social distancing to be far from each other. Or maybe we should have a parklets. We should provide a parklets. Actually, it's a turning parking space, pop-up parks, public seating platforms that convert curbside parking spaces into the vibrant community spaces. Because it is very famous since COVID-19's crisis, it has forced restaurants, bars, and other businesses to close their indoor spaces. And parklets actually has exploded in popularity. It offers a place to stop, to sit, and rest while taking activities in the street. Or maybe we can have a pocket parks, a mini parks, which these spaces can become islands of relief for residents which wanting a venture of exercise and fresh air, breathable spaces in the city. And maybe may I suggest that we can have an adopt park, which can be constructed within the pocket spaces in the city, in the office area, collaborations with the corporate agency as breathing spaces in the city. Next. I also believe in holistic collaborations to tap into the nature therapeutic effects. It is perhaps more time consuming than ever to strengthen the intersections between the landscape architects, urban planners, environmental psychology, and public health, and to explore how to use natural spaces in the cities to mitigate some of the psychosocial effects of the current public health emergency involving isolations, anxiety, and depressions. I always believe in holistic collaborations which among all the professionals. According to the Wall Street Journal, you can Google this application. There is a new application called Nature Quan or Nature Quantification for users to track the time they spend in the nature. Much likely they are counting the steps. So through this innovative technology, machine learning and big data, Nature Quan provides a tool to fully leverage the nature's impact using the catchphrase that 2 hours in the park become the next 10,000 steps. And I also think that the public health or hospital should have their own therapeutic or meditation garden, which actually they can use this garden and take the COVID-19 patients, which is under quarantine, to spend outdoor, to spend maybe it can be part of the hospital activities to be in the garden for about maybe 2 hours just to release the stress, because they are in a very stressing moments, situations at that time, and maybe the effects can be long lasting even they are already recovered. So you don't know what will happen towards that kind of person. So I think the horticultural gardening, horticulture activity can be part of the activities that public health can done to treat the COVID-19 patients. Because as we know that urban farming, permaculture, horticulture gardenings are very famous during the lockdown period for a food security. So maybe this is activities that can be done in the hospital to treat the COVID-19 patients, rather than they just sit inside the hospital or maybe sit inside doing nothing. So I think this is something that the public health should be thinking how we can help people to strengthen their mental health crisis during this pandemic. Next. In conclusion, maintaining of increasing space for nature in the cities and keeping it accessible to the public should be part of the sustainability agenda, aiming simultaneously to strive toward SDG 3 and SDG 11, and actually it is more SDG 3, SDG 4, 6, 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15, with having a proper quantitative and qualitative indicator to push the boundaries and go beyond in implementing the sustainability development in Malaysia. Because access to the parks and green spaces is vitally important for the health and well-being of individual, and it will lead to healthier populations in the future. I think that's all from me. Next. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that, Madam Juita, all right. Now, thank you so much for your presentation just now. Everybody is happy. I could see from the chat box, from the FB Live, and also from the Zoom, they were all interacting. And thank you for making the session today very, very lively. Landscape Architect Juita, and they are all very impressed with the presentation. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, Landscape Architect Juita brought from the history that really changed the way parks being used and the way parks change the way of people's healthy lifestyles and whatnot. Yeah. And she brought us with her projects that not only she just theoretically expressed the beauty or the importance of parks, what she has done in her beautiful projects, of course, and then her visions and missions of how to go about after this. So we have one question here, Landscape Architect Juita. We all know that apart from being a very ladylike person, you are very tough on site too. So that's the other sides of Landscape Architect Juita, which I really love to share. Would you like to also share with us, how do you tackle or how do you adapt to the challenges as a landscape architects to really prepare your parks for the user to use after the pandemic whatsoever, and you have to cope within the challenges of working within the pandemic period. So would you like to share with us your experiences on this matter? Thank you.
Okay, I think there should be like a proper SOP that have to be have to be discussed, have to be sit down together within the park management and landscape architect, how we're going to make sure that there is a safety, the park is safe for people to use it. It can be like, like provide a one public access rather than a few access. We have to control the quantity of people using the parks instead of too many people, which can be very dangerous for social distancing because some of them are not following SOP. So I think there should be a limitations of quantity of people entering the parks at one current situation. There should be always a monitoring from the guards to ensure that everyone's following SOP or guidelines given by the governments, and they should always, because people still need to go to the parks. So there's a lot of, there should be a monitoring that have to be done by the parks management itself. And as a landscape architect, we can always suggest to them how we can ensure that parks is safe to use and open during the pandemic. Yeah. So
sorry. Over to you. Yes, landscape architect.
The second one is what? The second question is what?
The second question is that the challenges maybe that involve the construction technical matters, during this pandemic construction.
I think the challenges would be we are not be able to meet the consultants during the meeting. So actually we need to, because we are doing a lot of designs coordination, which actually we are doing it through online, is going to be very difficult to coordinate with other people, other consultants through online rather than we meet face to face. So I think actually that's one of the most challenges that most of people are facing right now, but we have tried to adapt it, but at the same time, I think having an online meeting actually save a lot of cost, a lot of time. So that's a good thing about online meeting. But we are also very conscious about going to the site during this pandemic to ensure that we are always safe, because as we know that most of the cases happening at the site construction. So we ourselves, we are limiting people to go to the site. We don't want too many people to go to the site because it's going to be very difficult if one person are infected. It can infect all of people in the firms, and the consequences is going to be very bad. So we need to look after ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves to ensure that we are safe during this crisis. Yeah, because we still have to work. We still have to go to the site and monitor the contractors' work. So there should be some strategies what need to be done, a preventive measure, how we want to make sure that everyone's are safe in the company, or our staff are safe during this crisis. Yeah.
Correct. You know why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm posing this question to landscape architect Juita. I remembered last time when she was in the council, so she will brought with her laptop. So she'll be doing her projects while we are doing meeting. So this lady can never stop. So that's why I'm asking that question. Congratulations, landscape
Thank you so
architect Juita.
much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here actually, to share my knowledge, my facts, the statistics that I got. So thank you.
I'm
Thank
very
you
happy
again.
to have you also, definitely. All the best and stay strong, my pretty lady.
Thank
So you are one
you.
of the proof that a beautiful lady can also work on site with
Thank you
those,
so much.
right?
Yeah.
So don't play with us, right? So this is SDG number 5, gender equality. So we okay, let's say kita Juita, thank you so much for your time and
Oh, yeah,
also for
welcome.
your papers. Definitely, we definitely learned a lot from you.